Everyone remembers that Esau traded everything for one meal. Almost no one notices that hunger was not the only problem. The story is usually reduced to something almost too easy. One brother comes home exhausted, the other brother has food, a ridiculous deal is made, the meal disappears and the future goes with it. Simple, convenient, and a little too shallow, because Esau did not give away something valuable only because his stomach was empty. He gave it away because in that moment now felt more important than later. And this is where the simple version starts to crack. Esau had been outside, working, hunting, pushing through the heat, and apparently reaching the conclusion that no human being had ever suffered like a man who missed one meal. Then he came home and smelled Jacob's stew. Suddenly the bowl became the loudest thing in the room. The birthright was still his. The position was still his. The inheritance, responsibility, family privilege, and future connected to it still belonged to him. But none of those things could be eaten immediately. The stew could, and urgency has a strange talent. It makes temporary discomfort feel permanent. It makes the future look optional. It makes a terrible exchange look reasonable for just long enough to complete it. The problem was not only the meal, it was the value Esau had already stopped giving to what belonged to him. A truly valuable thing does not become worthless because lunch is late. Yet Esau looked at a passing feeling and treated it like a life-ending emergency. Hunger was speaking loudly, and the future had the bad manners to remain quiet. That is how disastrous trades usually work. The thing being lost looks distant. The thing being offered feels immediate. One shapes years, the other fixes the next few minutes. And when someone has already stopped respecting what comes later, a few minutes can become extremely persuasive. It was like selling his future for immediate relief, then finally understanding the price after the relief was gone. The meal was warm. The decision was quick. The consequences were not. This was not magical stew. Jacob had not cooked a bowl of destiny soup powerful enough to erase human judgment. He had food. Esau had something far more valuable. One would last for a few minutes. The other could shape generations. The meal did not create the contempt. It exposed it. That is why the scene matters. A bowl is easy to remember. Hunger is easy to understand. A terrible deal can be explained in one sentence. But contempt is quieter. It starts before the negotiation. It lowers the value before the price is named. It convinces someone that losing something permanent is acceptable, as long as temporary discomfort ends. Esau did not suddenly decide that his birthright meant nothing beside Jacob's cooking pot. The moment simply revealed that he had already begun treating the future as cheap. The meal was not the cause, it was the evidence. And the meal was not even the beginning. And the meal was not even the beginning. Esau did not lose everything at the bowl. He had already been treating his own future like something cheap. Before the trade, there was already a crack. Too much impulse. Too little vision beyond the moment. Too much appetite for now. Too little weight given to what was lasting. The famous scene did not create the problem. It simply made the problem visible. Esau was the firstborn. That meant more than being the brother who arrived a few minutes earlier. The birthright carried position, inheritance, responsibility, and a future connected to the family line. It was not a decorative title. It was not an old family tradition that everyone mentioned, but nobody understood. And it was definitely not something to exchange because dinner was taking too long. But Esau lived as if the future could wait forever, while the present demanded attention immediately. The story does not show only a tired man. It shows someone who, under the pressure of the moment, revealed how little he valued what he carried. And that is the uncomfortable part. Sometimes loss does not begin when something is taken away. It begins when the person has already reduced the value of what they possess. Esau still owned the birthright, but ownership means very little when the owner has already decided that what he carries is not worth much. The title was still his. The inheritance was still his. The future was still his. But in his mind, the price was already falling. That is how dangerous exchanges become possible. The valuable thing does not suddenly become small. The person simply starts looking at it as if it is. Esau had strength. He knew how to hunt, move, endure heat, and chase what was in front of him. That worked well when the problem had 4 legs and could be followed across a field. Long-term vision was apparently less exciting because apparently treating an inheritance like a minor detail is an excellent strategy for the future. Of course, the problem was not that Esau lacked power. The problem was that power without restraint can still make terrible decisions. He knew how to pursue what he wanted. He was much less prepared to protect what could only be understood over time. The birthright promised something later. Hunger demanded something now, and when now becomes the only thing that feels real, later starts looking strangely negotiable. It was like holding an opportunity that could shape an entire life, then trading it for something that only fixes one afternoon. From a distance, the exchange looks ridiculous. Up close, urgency makes it sound reasonable. Almost. Esau's future had not become worthless. He had simply stopped measuring it correctly. That is what contempt does. It does not always arrive with anger. Sometimes it looks casual, a shrug, a quick decision, a valuable thing treated as if another one could easily replace it. But some things do not come back that way. Jacob did not create the crack. He noticed it. And then hunger walked straight into the room carrying the perfect opportunity. Because the problem was never only appetite, it was contempt disguised as urgency. And then the hunger found an offer. And then the hunger found an offer. Esau came in exhausted, and what had already been cracking finally received a price. This is where the story changes. It was no longer only fatigue. It was no longer only appetite. It was no longer only a man asking for food. Now there was a negotiation. Jacob had the stew. Esau had the birthright. One could solve the next few minutes, the other could shape years. And somehow, the bowl became the more urgent object in the room. That is the part many simple versions rush past. Esau was not only impulsive, he acted as if the future were disposable. He looked at something permanent, compared it with something immediate, and let the immediate win because it was louder. That is how bad exchanges usually happen. Almost every disastrous trade looks small in the moment, because now makes noise, and the future stays silent. The future does not shout. It does not smell like hot food. It does not remove discomfort in 15 minutes. It simply waits to reveal the price later. A very inconvenient system. Esau saw the stew, felt the hunger, and spoke as if he were at the edge of death. He was exhausted, yes. He was hungry, certainly. But he was also dramatic enough to treat one difficult afternoon like the closing scene of his life. And Jacob listened. Jacob did not have to invent Esau's weakness. He only had to put a number on it. The offer was simple. The food in exchange for the birthright, not a portion of it, not a temporary loan, not a small family favor to be discussed later. The birthright. Esau had what should have been worth more than the bowl. And still, the moment spoke louder than the inheritance. It was like giving up something that would take years to build for something that brings relief for 15 minutes. From a distance, that sounds impossible. Inside urgency, it can sound reasonable. That is why the bowl did not create the problem. It revealed the size of it. The hunger was loud, the long-term vision not so much. Esau treated discomfort as an emergency and the future as a detail. That reversal was the real danger. Because when temporary pain feels larger than permanent value, almost anything can be negotiated. Identity, responsibility, opportunity, legacy. All of it can look strangely cheap when relief is close enough to touch. Jacob had the food. Esau had the future. The trade should have ended before it began. Instead, Esau kept moving toward it. Not because the stew was powerful, not because the birthright had changed, but because the now had become enormous and the future had become small. The plate did not create that blindness. It only gave it a place to become visible. By then, the decision was nearly made before the agreement was even spoken. And then one meal became a permanent loss. And then one meal became a permanent loss. This is where hunger stopped being a feeling and became a choice. Esau agreed. For one meal, he gave away something that carried weight, future, identity, responsibility, and legacy. That is what makes the scene unforgettable. It was not only about food, it was about someone treating as ordinary what should have been non-negotiable. Jacob had the stew, Esau had the birthright. One could satisfy a hunger that would pass. The other could shape a family for generations. The difference in value was almost embarrassing. And still, Esau accepted the trade. Jacob asked him to swear to it, because apparently even disastrous decisions need an official confirmation. Esau swore. He did not ask for time. He did not step away. He did not decide that perhaps a man should avoid reorganizing his entire future while extremely hungry. That would have been inconveniently sensible. This was not only impulse, it was the present devouring the future. Esau had hunger for food, but almost no hunger for the future. That is the irony at the center of the scene. He wanted relief immediately, so everything connected to later began to feel strangely unimportant. It was like selling an entire house because he needed enough money to survive the weekend. The need may feel urgent. The exchange is still terrible. And Esau moved through it quickly. The famous scene was not the beginning. It was the moment the problem was caught in the act. Before that moment, the contempt had been internal. Now it had a price. Now it had been spoken aloud. Now it had become an agreement. The meal looked small. The trade revealed something much larger. Esau no longer knew how to measure value. He looked at the bowl and saw relief. He looked at the birthright and saw delay. Relief could be touched, smelled, and eaten. The future remained silent. Apparently, several generations of consequence needed better presentation. Jacob gave him bread and stew. Esau ate, he drank, he stood up, he left. The story moves through the moment almost brutally fast. No long ceremony, no dramatic warning, no glowing message over the bowl explaining that this might be a bad idea. Just hunger, food, agreement, and departure. The speed matters. The meal ended almost immediately. The choice did not. His hunger faded. The trade remained. And that is why the bowl matters. Not because it had power, not because the food controlled him, but because it revealed a heart that had already stopped recognizing the value of what it carried. The meal was temporary. The contempt was not. Esau treated the birthright as if it were replaceable, as if another future could be prepared after dinner, as if legacy could be recovered once his stomach was full. It could not. The scene is famous because the object was small and the cost was enormous. One bowl, one agreement, one meal. And when the hunger passed, the emptiness became greater. And when the hunger passed, the emptiness became greater. Esau gave away everything for one meal, but the meal only revealed one thing. He had already begun treating the future as cheap. That is the center of the story. He felt hungry. He came home exhausted. He saw immediate relief. He negotiated what was valuable. He received a quick solution. And in the process, he revealed how little weight the birthright carried in his hands. The story is not about a meal powerful enough to ruin a man. The stew did not hypnotize him. The bread did not erase his memory. Jacob was not running an ancient restaurant with destiny-changing side effects. Esau made a trade because the present felt urgent and the future felt distant. The food was not the cause. It was the evidence. And when the moment arrived, Esau showed what he valued most. Not inheritance, not position, not responsibility, relief, right now. That is why the scene remains uncomfortable. The trade was terrible, but it was not random. It matched the way Esau had already been measuring his life. The immediate had weight, the lasting did not. The visible felt real, the future felt theoretical, and theoretical things are easy to sell when dinner is sitting directly in front of someone. But the birthright was not theoretical. It carried identity, privilege, responsibility, and a place in the future of the family. Esau could not see all of that inside the bowl. He could only see that he was hungry, and apparently the future had failed to arrive with steam rising from it. So he chose what felt useful in the moment. That is how many great losses begin, not with an enormous disaster, not with a dramatic enemy arriving at the door. Sometimes they begin when someone treats something valuable as if it were replaceable, a promise, an opportunity, a responsibility, a future. The loss begins before the object is gone. It begins when its value is reduced. It is like throwing away the key to an important door because, in that particular minute, the key does not seem useful. The door still matters, the key still matters. The person simply cannot see beyond the current room. That was Esau's tragedy. It was not only that he ate, it was that he negotiated identity, future, and inheritance for something that would be gone within hours. The hunger passed. The meal ended. The birthright did not return. Esau believed he was trading an inheritance for a meal. In reality, he was trading the future for immediate relief. And the most dangerous part was not the size of the meal. It was how small the future had already become in his eyes. That is why Esau did not lose because of the food. He lost because when the moment came to measure what mattered, he gave permanent value a temporary price. Which misunderstood Bible story should be simplified next? Jacob, Saul, or Samson?